Well, hello, coffee breakers, and it's good to see you here on another Saturday. If my voice sounds a little bit funny, I'm dealing with a cold. It's actually sounding better than it did, and I'm pretty confident it's going to hold together. But we've got some great things to talk about and share today. So put on the brakes, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation because it's time for Coffee Breaks with Steve. I am drinking coffee right now. I actually earlier, when I first got up, made myself a nice cup of throat coat tea. I don't know if you've heard of that. Shalane, I know you have. You've used it before, but it's actually designed to kind of help relax the coat and relax the vocal folds when you're dealing with something like this. And I don't have out and out laryngitis, but I can tell that yeah, it's not all together there, and that's okay. That's okay. I'm still feeling 100% better than I felt a couple of days ago. So, and yes, I have tested now a couple of times to make sure it's not COVID. Not that it matters that much because I haven't been leaving the house. I do have to go out a little bit later today, briefly, but not really spending a ton of time around other people. So that's good too. Seeing who's here. Sasha Land was on right away. Jerry Thompson is here. Good morning. Kim Baker, good meowing afternoon and happy Catterday. Absolutely, because that's what we are all about. And don't strain your voice too much, Steve. No, I'm not going to strain it. The nice thing about pre-recording conversations with our guests these days, for the most part, is that after I get past some preliminaries, I'll just kick back here and relax for a little bit. I won't have to talk the entire time. You may notice that my setting is not the typical Saturday morning or meowing afternoon or Saturday setting. I was traveling until Tuesday of this week. I was back east, and usually once I get home, I go ahead and reset up my studio downstairs because I take my computer with me when I travel. And I actually started catching this cold, having symptoms of this cold Monday evening before I had to fly out of Providence, Rhode Island, early Tuesday morning. Didn't sleep well Monday night because the throat was getting kind of raw and stuff. And masked all the way home on Tuesday. And just got home and just even having the energy to unpack and start to do laundry and get back into any kind of flow just wasn't going that well. And I frankly just sat up here on the dining room table this week to get some things done. I thought, let's leave it here. And I'm going to be leaving before next Saturday. I have to go on another short trip. We'll be talking about that at the end, where I'll be and what we'll be doing. So why hook everything back up when I'm going to be unhooking it by the end of the week, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, it's good to see you here. Kathy Garlick is here as well. Yes, thank you, Kim. Yes, for noticing this. It's not actually a built-in, but it did come with the house when we bought it. We made a deal with previous owners that they would leave this cabinet behind because Carol just loved it. And you will notice that there is a salt and pepper shaker set in there that are gnomes. So absolutely ties in with who I am and what I'm all about. All right, listen, again, glad that you're here. Make sure that you do say hello in the chat and participate in the conversation. I want to share some things going on this week with you on our Sweet and Savory. And tomorrow, this is something that I've been a fan of for most of my life. We've always followed the Indianapolis 500. I mean, we're not like people who know every fact about every single driver and follow their entire careers, but I have always enjoyed the Indy 500. In fact, attending the Indy 500 in person is one of my bucket list items. I hope to someday be able to be there at the Brickyard and actually watch it. But tomorrow is the running of the Indy 500. I did spend some time this last week watching the time trials, the qualifying for being in the race, qualifying for pole positions. And I just thought it was interesting. A couple of facts that I thought were interesting about the Indy 500. This is the 108th. Doesn't mean that there have been 108 consecutive years, because there have been times, because of wars and other situations, where they have not held the Indy 500 in a given year. But for the most part, it's happened every year since 1911. And in that very first race, the winner was a guy by the name of Ray Haroon, who had actually been a race car driver prior to this in races. I mean, they were doing races from the time basically that cars were available. Once Henry Ford was mass producing cars of any sort, people were finding ways to pit them against each other. And there were actually sanctioned track races already happening. And Ray Haroon had been a driver that we know about in races starting in 1905. And he had actually retired in 1910, a year before the first Indy 500, but came out of retirement to participate in the race in this bright yellow number 32 car. And he actually was innovative, because prior to that, they would frequently have a driver and a mechanic in the car. Hang on. This is partially because I want to keep the throat going, but also because, coffee. And and he was the first one to put rear view mirror on the car so he could see who was coming up behind him, rather than the mechanic, who was also an observer. And of course, that took away some of the weight, and they had to make a decision as to whether they would allow it, and they did. And obviously, that was innovative. But so much has changed. Those first cars had no protection whatsoever. In fact, for so many years, really up until fairly recent times, there were a number of things with the cars that they've continued to improve for driver safety and track safety and a variety of other things. Still wouldn't say it's a safe sport. There are still bad accidents, people get injured, people still get killed. And not a sport for the faint-hearted or the untrained. But in that very first Indy 500, the average speed was 74.6 miles per hour, which at the time was considered extraordinarily fast, if you think about it. If you think about 1911, and a car going over 70 miles an hour was crazy. That's freeway speed. That's high freeway speed. In last year, the average speed, which included slowdowns for various reasons, etc., was 168, over 168 miles per hour. The pole qualifying position for this year's race, set by Scott McLaughlin, is 234.22 miles per hour. Is a new qualifying record. Not the fastest speed ever recorded on the track, but the fastest pole position qualifying record. So yes, Kim, barring complications with weather, which does happen there. I don't know what your forecast. I didn't look up your forecast in the area. Kim lives in Indiana, so she is much better geared to know what may be happening. I've been in that area before. I have, flying into or flying out of Indianapolis, seen the Motor Speedway from the air. I've never actually been to the Motor Speedway. I mean, it's more than just a racetrack. There's an entire complex there. They've got all kinds of things in the infield. There's actually a golf course and any number of things there. But hi, Rick. Good to see you here. To pit them against each other. Get it? Pits. Yeah, that's great. That is absolutely great, Kim. Thank you. Also, we know that this is Memorial Day weekend. Monday is Memorial Day. And we do a lot of things on Memorial Day, and this is not to guilt trip anybody who has a picnic or go shopping or anything else, because that's what a lot of the commercial focus is on, isn't it? That's what a lot of the focus of having a day off from work, which many people do on this national holiday, which, along with a number of other holidays back in the 70s, was set to, rather than being on a specific date, was set to being on a specific Monday to create 3-day weekends. And that's fine. But I also think it's important that we keep in mind what the true meaning of holidays like Memorial Day really are. And we're going to be sharing that today during our episode. I think it's important to do. And Curious about what your plans are. And again, I'm not trying to guilt trip anybody. So if your plans are to have a picnic or go do something fun on this 3-day weekend, that's fine. Share that in the chat. This is not to say you shouldn't be doing fun things, but I think we also have an opportunity to take time this weekend. Is really we should, it's just like so many other things, we shouldn't have to stop one day a year to remember those who have paid the highest price for our freedom. And that's what Memorial Day is really, really about. It also doesn't mean that, we mix up Memorial Day and Veterans Day very often. We've talked about this before. We talked about it at Veterans Day, that one is about um, remembering those who served and died, Memorial Day. And the other, Veterans Day, is about honoring, recognizing all veterans, everyone who has served in the military. And we want to keep them straight, but that doesn't mean that on Memorial Day, you can't thank a veteran who's still living. And on Veterans Day, we obviously include those who served and have since died or maybe died in the line of duty. So yes, they're separate and yet both give an opportunity to honor. And that's enough of my soapbox speech on that for the day. Here's a question for you. Are there any movies that you think of that are great Memorial Day movies to watch? A lot of different things you can watch for Memorial Day. I mean, there's a lot of different, some people watch war movies, some people, like to watch just other movies on Memorial Day. But I'm wondering if there are any that stand out to you that really mark the day appropriately. And I do have one I want to share, but I want to see what some of you may put in the chat in terms of movies, because I think there are several. I think there are several really good ones out there, that some of which are based on true stories, some of which may be fictional or fictionalized, but still do a good job of keeping Memorial Day focused. So do you have any that you want to share? Sorry, I've got my Kleenex here. My nose is not nearly as drippy as it was, but it's not 100% either. So we're gonna yeah, I think, Carissa, did you just put the We Were Soldiers in there? I saw it's under the Coffee Breaks banner. And that is definitely one that comes to mind. We Were Soldiers is one that's based on a true story. And it's definitely one that's worth watching. Okay. Thank you for sharing that one. Anybody else have one? There's one that I ran into a few years ago, and it was actually a made-for-TV movie. You can find it on Amazon, I think, and Max. It may have originally been produced by HBO, but it is one of the most moving, true story, Memorial Day focused. It doesn't take place on Memorial Day, but it's one called Taking Chance. It's with Kevin Bacon, and it's based on a true story. There's no action in it. It's not some fast-moving action movie. It is a true story about a Marine colonel who has not gone back to Iraq and Afghanistan. This is post 9/11, and he served in Kuwait several years before, and he's a well recognized, well decorated Marine, but he just feels compelled to escort a recently killed in action Marine back home. And it's following that journey. And it shows along the way, not in graphic form, but appropriately, it shows how those who are killed in action are taken care of in the field, not so much in the field, but when they are being brought back home and prepared for burial, and the steps along the way, and just follows him, but also people he encounters every step of the way who honor and respect this fallen Marine and this escort. It is definitely worth watching. I highly recommend it. And if any of you have seen it, let me know what your thoughts were. And if you haven't seen it, find it. Find it this weekend and watch it, please. I don't think I'm making a flat-footed statement that can't be supported when I say it's worth it. And I think you'll enjoy watching it. All right. We also have some birthdays that I wanted to recognize, and today is one of them. My grandson Nicholas is celebrating his 9th birthday today. Unfortunately, I found out a couple of days ago that Nicholas ended up with a case of the flu. He's still down and recovering from that, and probably they're having to postpone his birthday celebration. And I know that's disappointing, but happy birthday, Nicholas. Love you. Hope you're feeling better and hope you get to enjoy your birthday. If not today, then spread it out and enjoy it in the days to come. All right. Happy birthday to Nicholas. And then Mel Thompson. Mel is my wife Carol's uncle. And he is just the loveliest man you'll ever meet. And he is celebrating his 89th birthday this week on May 27th. So happy birthday to Uncle Mel. And then another dear friend, a recent friend, but one that is part of this team that I'm with working. If you were tuning in a few weeks ago when Jenny Conley was on talking about the play that she wrote with her dad, Fiona in the Middle, I'm a part of that production. And Molly O'Brien Tao is also a part of that production as our stage manager. I think there should have been a capital B there on her name. So my apologies, Molly, but happy birthday to Molly as she celebrates this coming week. Also, do you have a special day this week that I didn't have on my list? A special day that you want to make sure that we acknowledge today while we're all together? And during this week, put it in the chat right now. If you got a special day coming up in the month of June, maybe even July, August, later in the year that you want to make sure we get on our calendar and not forget, it doesn't have to be a birthday. Maybe it's a wedding anniversary. Maybe it's another special day for you or a close member of your family that you want to make sure we acknowledge. Let us know. You can send us an email at cbwsteve@comcast.net, and we'll make sure that we include you or include your special someone in our acknowledgments for their special day. All right. I want to tell you a little bit about what's going to be going on in the next few minutes, the next 26 or 27 minutes, by letting you know about this special person who you're about to meet. Karen Pfeifer, excuse me, is a Gold Star widow and mother of two amazing daughters, Peyton and Trinity. Her husband, PFC Christopher F. Pfeifer, was one of 6 paratroopers in the 1st Squadron, 91st Cavalry Regiment, 173rd Airborne Brigade, also known as Task Force Sabre, who were killed while serving a deployment in Afghanistan in 2007. She uses her life experiences as a resource to help others who are experiencing trauma and loss, including sharing her story and serving as an advocate for veterans and their families. Karen serves on the board of trustees for the Sabre 6 Foundation. She and her daughters make their home in Montgomery, Texas. It's a special story. Stay tuned till the very end. Here is my conversation with Karen Pfeifer. Karen, welcome to Coffee Breaks with Steve, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We have a story that I want you to share for this Memorial Day weekend. But before we get into you talking about your husband, Chris, I would like people to get to know who Karen Pfeifer is a little bit. So can you tell us just a little bit about what life was like growing up?
I had a very rough growing up. My parents were split. I dealt with going into CPS, which is Child Protective Services. And so living kind of just feeling unwanted and just kind of all over the place and not ever feeling like secured somewhere.
And that kind of went through what age in your life? Were you still dealing with all of that?
Up until I met my husband, honestly, my mom decided to up and move from Texas to Nebraska, and I was about 16 at the time, and she decided that she felt that I would be better off at an alternative school than in her home. And so I got sent to an alternative school, which is actually where I ended up meeting my late husband at.
So tell us, how did you meet Chris? Talk about meeting him and how the two of you first really got involved.
So the alternative school is kind of like a boarding school. They have you live there on campus, on base, and they have girls' dorms and male dorms. And so you have jobs that you have to do while you're there, like cleaning the gym or cleaning, the rec areas and so forth. And I was working in the gym at the time, and he was exercising in the gym. And so I noticed him there initially, but he also kind of hung out with the same people that I associated with as well. And so we kind of connected in that sense of, doing the same things in areas.
So was it love at first sight, infatuation at first sight? How did it go from just meeting each other to where you became serious with each other? How long did that take? Was it pretty quick?
No, it took a little bit. I think we were both kind of, not sure. We were young, just kind of hanging out. I mean, we were flirting a little bit. Probably a couple of weeks before he asked me out, a group of us decided to go hiking, and we all went hiking, and he was there. And so he pulled me aside after climbing up a huge mountain hill and asked me if I would be interested in dating him. And I mean, from there on, it was, that's pretty much what it wrote. Now, due to life's circumstances, being young and dumb sometimes, we broke up for a little while. But we got back together and we got married. And then he joined the military.
So how old were you when you got married?
We were 19.
And then did he immediately join?
Yes, that was right. So while we were dating, about, a couple years we were dating, and he discussed that he had wanted to go into the military. His brother was in the military, in the Army as well. So he felt that that would be a good way for him to support a family and grow, and, be able to help his, community. And so he decided to do that. I support him, and we got married before he signed up. And as soon as he went off to basic training, he was there for 6 months right after getting married.
Wow. And then at what point after that did he first get his orders to deploy overseas?
So he was in basic training for about 6 months. Before he got out of basic training, I had his orders already in hand, which is kind of unheard of, but we were going to Germany. We went to Germany in about September, and then he ended up deploying in May.
And where was he sent when he deployed?
He was sent to Afghanistan.
Now, I know we start to get into some more of I think a difficult part of the story, but I also think it's an important part of the story to talk about when Chris was wounded and what that was like, both for him and for you, and that part of the story for people to really understand everything that occurred. Can you share that as well?
Well, when he deployed, I was about 4 or 5 months pregnant. And he was deployed from by because they didn't know what kind of state I would be in due to my pregnancy and how far along I was. They got him stable enough to transport him from Afghanistan to Germany, where I met him at the hospital. He wasn't really coherent, even though he kind of knew that I was there, I feel, but have what it takes to take care of his needs due to his injuries being as severe as they were. The bullet had traveled down and had hit his liver, kidneys, lung, and his spinal cord. So he was going to be paralyzed from the mid-waist down. And he also had nicked his bowel as well. So they couldn't take care of him in Schweinfurt, Germany. And the next flight out was to San Antonio, Texas. Being as far along as I was pregnant, 34 weeks, about 30 weeks pregnant, the Air Force cutoff time is 35 weeks, give or take. And so they almost did not allow me to be on the medevac plane with him during all of that.
But you were able to fly back to the States with him. And
yes.
Then you were in San Antonio at that point?
Yes, we were in San Antonio at Brooke Army Medical Center.
And at this point, you were about 34 weeks pregnant. By the time you arrived, getting close to 35 weeks pregnant, what happened with Chris in San Antonio?
He was able to talk to me and joke with me. We actually had a really good, interactions with each other while he was still there. He was able to feel my stomach and talk about it and see how big I had gotten. We all love to hear that, but he was excited about it. The 173rd threw me a baby shower, and Chris was able to see the clothes, and there's a pair of boots that he was actually playing with that Peyton, our daughter, ended up being able to get. So he got to have some of those little experiences. He did not understand why I could not deliver at the hospital which he was at. I would have to go to a different one due to they didn't have the delivery there. But his wounds and his vitals and his health was not getting any better. They were trying to do a lot of, treatments and stuff, but he had an E. coli infection that was spreading through his body. And due to that, he started hallucinating, and it would scare him really bad at the end. So I tried to comfort him, but they weren't able to get the infection under control. And so he ended up passing away 2 days prior to our daughter being born.
Karen, at that point, you are now dealing with your husband's death. You're dealing with the imminent arrival of your daughter, and a funeral's being planned. What did you have to do with all of that going on?
Do it. Take care of it. I didn't feel like I had a choice. Yes, I had Chris's family around me, but me being me and not having, family growing up, it's like, it's my responsibility. It was my husband. So I dealt with bunches as they came. As soon as Chris passed away and they called it, which was in the afternoon, they took me over to the baby doctor to make sure that everything was okay due to my emotional state at the time. And so you just prepare for what's next. And the next step was inducing me so I could have our daughter the next day, because I had to plan a funeral and I had to attend a funeral. And so I had to be there, and he never got to meet our daughter. So I wanted her to be there, in a sense, to have that connection that she, possibly could with him. So I was, in a sense, I had to be induced the next day so we could travel, due to not being able to travel pregnant on airplanes. So I got induced. I had her the next day. And then we drove. We drove from Texas to Nebraska. And during that time, I planned his funeral and took care of our baby as we were driving down the interstate. I took care of our newborn baby.
What was life like for you in the aftermath of all of that?
I like to call it the widow fog, personally, because a lot of it I really don't remember. you just kind of go on autopilot and you just kind of do what you got to do. My sister-in-law, Chris's sister, Nikki, was there, thankfully. As stubborn as I can be, she was a little stubborner sometimes. And so, like, I'm sitting there trying to take care of everything because I feel like it's all on my shoulders, and trying to take care of now newborn daughter Peyton. I had to be forced to take it easy. My body was not recuperating necessarily like it should. I had some health issues with my C-section, having issues and having to go to the doctor and deal with that. I didn't really know where I belonged. I didn't know where I should go. We lived in Germany, so all of our stuff was in Germany. So I had to figure out, like, where I belonged and where I was going and how I was going to get our stuff from Germany. I was lost.
You were lost. And was there what help was available to you? What support was available to you during that time?
At that time, honestly, I didn't feel like there was much help. Now there's a lot of foundations, yes, but they were kind of, in a sense, starting around that time frame of 2007. So I was pretty isolated and alone, with other people just didn't understand. I was 22 years old with a newborn baby, and I was also a widow. Like, most people just can't comprehend that.
Right. I think it's also important. You talked a little bit about meeting Chris at school. You talked about, his joining the Army. What are just some things about Chris Pfeifer that you think people should just know about the person? Because I think sometimes, Karen, we get stuck with the story about what happened to him in Afghanistan, and we miss the opportunity to learn some of the things that drew you to him. What was it about Chris that made him special?
He had that hard exterior, like, a manly man, I guess, in a sense to say. But he was a country boy as well. He loved fishing. He loved hunting. He would help anybody that needed his help. He fought on the fire team at school, so he would go around and fight fires. He could play the drums by just listening to the music because he couldn't read sheet music. So he would go into his drum area and put music on at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on a weekend when he couldn't sleep. And he would sit there and play the drums extremely loud, but his music teacher lived across the street. So the next day, or when he'd go to school, the music teacher would be like, yeah, I heard you playing, wee hours of the morning. He loved life. He loved helping people and being there for people. And he didn't really ask for help necessarily. He just kept doing what he needed to do.
Eventually, and we're jumping ahead, I know, a bit here, but there's an organization that viewers of this show may be familiar with because we have featured Chris Calenda, we have featured Saber 6, but your husband, Chris, was a part of that 191 Cavalry of the 173rd Airborne under the command of Chris Calenda, and you were contacted and started to get involved. Can you share a little bit about that?
So after losing my husband and, trying to figure out life, years later, I was still struggling. I've gotten connected with a few different organizations that really helped me kind of find my backbone and find me and, work on changing my life. And so when I was feeling kind of at another low point of selling houses and living in a camper at the time with my girls, it was the summer, so we made it fun. I got an email randomly from my late husband's commander in regards to him starting a foundation. That he was really passionate about wanting to give back and help those soldiers that had went to war for him and dealt with the tremendous tragedies that they had to deal with and overcome, and that he would be interested and honored if I would be able to be on the foundation to be able to help give back. And that was a huge turning point in a positive direction for me.
And getting involved with Saber 6, what have you experienced as a member of that advisory board, as an active participant in some of the activities and events that Saber 6 has begun to put on over the last couple of years?
Well, when Chris and I had went to Germany and become a part of the Saber 6 with his unit, we became a huge family. Honestly, probably about the first time that Chris and I both felt really honestly accepted and as a unit with a family. And so when my late husband passed away, the guys were still in the fight and life goes on, but I felt, they were my family and I had disconnected because of life. And being a part of the Saber 6 Foundation, I feel like has brought back my family. And so being able to help them overcome some struggles and overcome different things that they have struggled with, it's amazing to see the transition because I've been there on a lot of points and seeing the happiness and the sparkle that comes back to these guys after dealing with whatever issues they may be dealing with, and hearing their stories, that it's a family, it's connection, you have your community back. It gives me a sense of power, a sense of feeling amazed. I don't know how to put it, just on top of the world to be able to help my husband's brothers in arms because he was passionate about that tremendously.
And, I've had an opportunity to attend a couple of Saber 6 events in the last year that you have been at as well, Karen. And I've seen a couple of things happen. One, as you've just been talking about, you've been able to give back. I have seen you speak into the lives of some of these veterans and their family members. And I know you have shared stories about some of the outreach beyond the immediate family. But you have also, the other thing that I've observed is that you have really been embraced by these brothers. You really have become a sister to all of them. They love you. And it has to have also given back to you in a lot of ways to know that you are still surrounded by people who care about you and care for you and your girls.
Tremendously. So, because we were young and married, I did get to hang out with them and do barbecues and football and family stuff. And after my husband passed away, a lot of the guys still kept in contact. And so for me and my daughter Peyton, and also my daughter Trinity now as well, they're her uncles. They've taken her hunting. They've went to her birthday parties. They come and they always call and connect. And it's just made a huge impact on us feeling like we belong again and we have that family, regardless of what may be going on. They're always there. I know Christmas, a few other times I've spent on the phone with a few of the veterans due to whatever issues for like 3 or 4 hours on Christmas. It doesn't matter. And I know I've been on the phone because I've been upset. And when you have that support system, it doesn't matter when it is. You're there to help in any way you can.
You mentioned that there have been other organizations and services that helped you, but you have also now begun to get involved not only with Saber 6, but in other ways. Can you talk about some of the things that you have been doing and that you are doing right now and plan on doing in the future to continue your outreach?
Well, thankfully, because of the Saber 6, I've been able to get connected with the right individuals that have really helped me open my eyes up to the possibilities, what I do have to offer from to people due to my experiences. I did date a veteran for quite a few years, which is my latest or youngest daughter's dad as well. So I have experiences of, sadly, the concept of losing a husband, but also dealing with veteran situations as well. So from my experiences and the amazing support that I've been able to have, I've realized that my story and what I have to say is very important to get out there and to talk about. And so being able to create something for myself of helping others and telling my story and letting people know that there are people that truthfully, honestly do care. You just have to be able to fight once and you can succeed beyond measure.
One of the things that you are beginning to do now is find additional forums, public forums, to share your story. And I'm appreciative that you're utilizing this as one of them. But what are your goals? What would you like to be doing? Where would you like to be taking your story in the future?
There's a lot of different avenues. I grew up in a home with domestic violence. I've dealt with it myself as well. So being able to help people that have dealt with that, people that perhaps just need some encouraging. And so being a positive light for others, possibly, perhaps maybe going in front of Congress as well to, try to make a big change in different areas that can help multiple people in a lot of ways.
Karen Pfeifer, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Coffee Breaks on this Memorial Day weekend. God bless you. Wish you the very best to you and your girls.
And thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Our conversation with Karen Pfeifer, and once again, Karen is on here, and so thank you, Karen, for taking the time to share your story. It obviously isn't easy to share and relive some of those times, but I think you can understand and see and hear from Karen how important she believes it is to share the story, to be there for others, to be an advocate, to be a voice, to be an ambassador. So thank you, Karen. And I think I can also say for all of us, it's difficult to think of Memorial Day as simply being a day for picnics and store sales after you hear Karen's story, after you see a video like this. So again, the goal isn't to make this heavy, it's to make it real and to keep us all mindful of what Memorial Day is about, what life is about, and to continue to appreciate those who serve and to continue to appreciate and honor and acknowledge those who have paid the ultimate price to secure our freedoms. So thank you, Karen. And again, while the conversation with Karen was pre-recorded, you can put your comments and your questions in the chat. I also want to share as we get ready to wrap up today, and thank you once again for being here. I know that we had a moment of some technical issues, not sure exactly what caused that. There was a little bit of a dropout a couple of times there in the middle, and hard to say sometimes what causes that. Sorry, I'm trying to copy a link here that I want to get to all of us, and doesn't want to cooperate with me, but we'll get it to cooperate because that's the kind of people we are. See if this works. We try things. Let's see what happens. There we go. I'm putting a link in the chat that is from the History Channel, and it's some history and facts about Memorial Day as a holiday, as a recognition. It's just one of any number of places you can look. Earlier, I put in the link to the Saber 6 Foundation's website. We've talked about that before, and yeah, I think we're still having a few technical issues. I'm not sure that that link went up on both sites. We're going to try again and just make sure it gets out there to you so that you can learn more about Memorial Day if you'd like to. Just also want to share what's going to be coming up in the next week, really. I don't have a lot that is finalized beyond next Saturday, although we've got some things in the works. I've been speaking to several people who are prepared to come on and share their stories. We just haven't scheduled specific dates yet. But next week, just going to be me. My voice should be back full. But we're going to be talking about, we get into June and a lot of things happen. We have graduations, weddings are common, and June weddings and other events that come up. And not just in June, they come up throughout the year, but it's a good time to talk about how we celebrate those special moments. What are the moments in our lives, in our families, and among our loved ones that we share special moments? And how do we go about doing that? What are our traditions? What are the things that we do to celebrate? So I invite you to be with me and be part of that conversation. We do have some other very, very interesting guests and stories that are in the works that we are bringing together. I'll be sharing more about that as we finalize those, but also want to hear from you. What are the topics that you would like to discuss? What are the conversations we should be having? You're around the virtual coffee table, so you are a part of this. And so many of the topics that have been part of Coffee Breaks with Steve, the guests who have joined us, are because you have suggested someone, you have introduced to someone, you have recommended a topic that we have been able to bring on the show. Share your ideas. You can email at cbwsteve@comcast.net with your ideas. We can discuss those. More than happy to find ways to bring those on. The last thing I'm going to ask you to do today, if you haven't already done so, is when we get done here today, would you go to our YouTube channel, which is, you can find it by putting in CBWS or Coffee Breaks with Steve when you go to YouTube, and it'll bring you to our channel. If you are not a subscriber, would you please subscribe? Even if you come onto Facebook on Saturdays to join the conversation, when you subscribe on our YouTube channel, it gives you access to seeing some additional things that we're working on putting up there. It also makes sure that other people are seeing us. As we get more subscribers, we're more visible. And conversations like this one with Karen Pfeifer are available to more people. And if you would not mind, if you're already a subscriber, would you share the channel and share your reasons why you think people should subscribe with your friends, with your family members, with your network, and ask them to subscribe and to like the videos and to watch the videos, because that's going to put these topics and these wonderful guests in front of even more people. So I thank you for letting me put that endorsement in and make that pitch, because we want to get this out to as many people as possible. All right, once again, Karen Pfeifer, you're amazing. I love you. Thank you for taking the time to share your story with us. Thank you to all of you for being here. As we go into this Memorial Day weekend, it is a time to remember. It is a time to honor. It's also a reminder that we all serve in a variety of ways in our lives. We all have something or things that we can give back. We all have a voice, even when it's subdued a little bit by a cold. We all have a voice. We all have passions. We all have the ability to take some action. So please find a way to make a difference in your world this week. God bless you. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.